Well, I wrote that op-ed about a training that I attended in my capacity as a school board president of a local school board in New York City. And usually school boards are attended by a very small number of people. And that was certainly true of the board that I was on. But when we switched to Zoom, because of COVID, we had more and more people, parents showing up, which is actually a good thing, which was one of the small upsides of Zoom culture in the COVID era. But in the particular school board that I sat on, one of our meetings went viral based on something someone has recently described to me as like intersectional madness, because there was a, one parent whose outburst at another parent, fellow board members, was over the fact that he was white and was holding a black child on his lap. And she thought that that was offensive for reasons that I still couldn't possibly articulate to you. But her outburst about that sort of went viral. Someone posted a clip on the internet, but people started paying attention, not just to the school board that I was on, which is one of the largest in New York City and in Manhattan, but to school boards around the country, because parents were starting to speak up, some quite in support of the ideology that this woman was talking about, which is encapsulated with Ibram Kendi and Robin DiAngelo's ideas. But parents who were pushing back on those ideas. So the school board fights, the school board wars that I think are still going on very much right now, that are going on, is where that op-ed that I wrote came from. It was also, I was responding to an interchange with Nikole Hannah-Jones, who is the author of the 1619 Project in the New York Times. She had interviewed me because she'd heard me speak as a school board parent, and she and I disagreed about a few things. And I referenced that disagreement and how parents should be able to come to the table to talk about their kids' education, even if they disagree with each other. And so that's what I wrote about in that op-ed.
Well, and it was also kind of, if I recall, your thought wasn't entirely represented accurately in that, in the article that was a result of that interview.
Well, what I had said, one of the things I had said to her, to Nikole Hannah-Jones in the interview, was that all parents had a right to come to the table. And so this idea that these anti-racist views, as articulated by Ibram Kendi, are the only views that you're allowed to have in the classroom, on the school board. I disagree with that. I think you have to make, especially in New York City, with this fantastically diverse city, parents get to come, regardless of their ideas, to talk about what they want out of their children's education. And it was portrayed, because I said, even if you think someone else is racist, they're a public school parent, they get to come and talk about their ideas. And that was endlessly portrayed in social media as me saying that I was condoning or supporting racists, being heard or listened to. What I was saying is, even if you think someone's point of view is racist, public school parents get to come together. Somewhat ironically, in the Twitter exchange I had with her, she accused me of being disingenuous because I referred to specialized high schools as majority POC standing for people of color, which they are, in fact. And many, many people got angry at her because they said it was rather racist to say that Asians are not people of color, because those specialized high schools and these schools in New York that you access through an exam are majority Asian, and so they are majority non-white or people of color. And so when she said it was disingenuous of me to say that, a lot of people accused her of racism. And what I said is, even the people who think she's racist have to acknowledge that she's a public school parent, just like me, just like, close to 1 million families, and we all get to come and we all get to talk about what we want for our children's education. That was the argument I was making. I believed it then and I believe it now.
It's interesting that you said that it's about treating parents and kids simply as people. Now, what do you mean by that?
Our discourse around these issues, around what to teach and how to teach it, and what we're allowed to teach, what we're allowed to say, what we're allowed to call each other, has become so polarized that that open discourse of just being able to talk about it is slipping away. And it's because we're labeling some people as sort of unworthy of being part of the conversation. You have to sort of agree with certain points of view, with certain language, with certain words before you even get to come to the table for the conversation, and that's not how it should be. And it's not how it can be in New York City or anywhere, but New York City's public school system is the largest in the country. It's pretty big, it's pretty diverse. And you have to accept the fact that walking through the door of your kid's school, there will be lots of parents who don't agree with you about important things. Nonetheless, you make a community, a school community, where there will also be many things you have in common, like the quality of the education you want for your children, and the fact that you want your children to treat each other with respect and kindness while they're learning together. Right? I think that's a through line you could draw through pretty much every public school parent. Sadly, I don't think I'm the only person who has lost their job because they said something they believed that their employer decided you don't get to say that. And in America, that shouldn't happen anywhere in my opinion, but in our country where we have First Amendment rights that are very explicit and very clear. I wasn't even talking about my job. I was talking about my kids' schools and my kids' education. And so the idea that my employer felt that they had the right to weigh in and to say that my ideas and my thoughts rendered me unfit to do my job, it's really troubling.
I would have to agree. They published these statements.
Yes.
But that actually led you to losing your job.
Well, we have a case that's in federal court right now. I am suing my employer and my union, and so to some extent that will be decided in federal court. I'll just say that, put on the lawyer hat, and I will say that case will follow the path through the courts that cases like that do.
Since that time, or during all this, you're actually running for city office.
Yes.
What prompted you to do this?
I ran for the school board back in 2017. And when you're working as a parent leader, that's the language we use in New York City for people who are on school boards and in the various sort of committees that exist within the school for parents to make their voice heard. You interact with a lot of local politicians, and you're knocking on their door and advocating for things for the kids' schools or for changes to all sorts of education policies. And you see up close how some of those local elected offices work. And I decided I would run for city council, which is the local, legislative body in New York City. And my plan, I took a sabbatical from my job, and my plan was to run for office. And if I got elected, great, I would be a city council member. And if I did not, I would return to a job that I had a legal right to return to, that I liked doing, that I was good at doing. And it was what I thought was a simple, safe plan to run for office and to return to my job if I was not elected.